Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your go-to guide for decoding current affairs the smart way for your UPSC examination. It's April 15th, 2025 and we are back again with another set of important topics to power your preparation. In the first section, in-depth analysis, we'll be covering firstly the concept of scheduled caste, subcategorization and Telangana's latest policy measures on the same, and why it matters for social justice and affirmative action will be the main theme. In the second article, we'll be talking about the recent study on the non-farming activities in the country, what it reveals about India's rural economy and employment trends. We also bring you the simplified articles tailored specifically for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination, touching on legal frameworks, cultural heritage and financial regulation. So stay tuned and let's dive in and make the current affairs your strength. Hello guys, welcome back to the Analyst. I hope you all are doing well and I also hope that your preparation is going fine. With this, I am going to start with today's first article, and this is regarding Telangana becoming the first Indian state to implement scheduled castes subcategorization in its own state, and this is actually a very major policy change, specifically in the field of reservations, which is a very important topic of your prelims, under which we have Indian polity and governance. Also, when we talk about GS2, we cannot ignore the provisions of our constitution. Mainly, we need to look about the various features and significant provisions and the basic structure within which we have to keep in mind the topic of reservation becomes extremely important. Also, we need to look at the various government policies and interventions that the government of India or the various state governments has taken for the upliftment of the vulnerable sections of the population. In this case, we have the scheduled castes of our country. When we talk about the issue, we have already discussed about the need for a caste survey in the previous analyst discussions. Here, we are going to understand the topic of subcategorization within the scheduled castes of our country. We know that the traditional Indian society followed a strictly hierarchical social structure or arrangement that is known as a caste system. And within the same, we have the SCs, which are at the lowest strata of that particular caste system, within which we also have several groups between the SC communities ranked accordingly within the SC list itself, or say within the SC classes themselves. So that is where we have the topic of scheduled castes categorization, and here this is defined as dividing the SCs or STs or OBCs into various subgroups for reservation benefits to ensure equitable distribution. Now we already have the reservations for our scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, the other backward classes. But why do we need to subclassify the various communities within these particular classes? There is a particular reason for which we have to understand that for any reservation policy, they must be following the tenets of fairness, justice, and obviously equality. If I talk about the SC community, there are so many communities, there are several communities between the SC communities themselves who faces discrimination from the other SC communities. So in one way we can understand, also this has been seen in so many other movies. For example, we have also seen the same in various instances of Jai Bhim or various other Indian movies, where they have shown that a particular SC community is actually ranked the lowest between the other SC communities. In that case, they face much more amount of social discrimination, much more amount of, say, social boycott when it comes to their own community. That is why most often we find the reservation policies, the government policies and the various other interventions most often do not even trickle down to them. That is why we need to address these intra-caste inequalities, be it land, be it the government jobs, or be it the representation of them in education and so many other sectors. They lag behind not only with reference to the rest of the people of our country, but also within their own SC community. This is the main thing through which we have to understand understand the topic of subcategorization, and this starts at the year around the year of 1975, when the Punjab government thought that we can actually give the reservation benefits much more in detailed manner and in much more clarified manner to the Balmiki and the Mazhabi Sikhs community, which are actually even till date one of the economically backward classes in the state of Punjab. But when the government of Punjab undertook the decision in 1975 to give the reservation benefits to these communities, right, it was actually struck down as a part which was told to be violative of the Constitution of India. We are going to look into the reasons why following on, but also we have to understand in 2000 the state of Andhra Pradesh also followed the same by giving some of the reservation benefits specifically within the SC community, specifically within some communities, specifically within the SC group themselves. But again, this was struck down majorly by a Supreme Court judgment known as the E.V. Chennaiya case of 2004. This particular struck down of this particular, say, State Government Act was applied in the Punjab, say, Government Act too, when the High Court of Punjab and Haryana, it struck down the Punjab subcategorization rule. But here we have to understand, in 2024, Supreme Court itself revoked its earlier judgment, right? It struck down its earlier judgment by a 7-judge bench. So this is why this particular debate becomes extremely important as to the evolving debates, evolving narratives for the call for subcategorization. As of now, we have to understand why subcategorization is needed at all. Firstly, we have already discussed in brief, we need to solve or resolve the various graded inequalities that exist between the SC communities themselves. For example, when we talk about the Arundityas in the state of Tamil Nadu, they consist of around 16% of the SC population, but only hold around 0 to 5% of the jobs in the government sector in the particular state of Tamil Nadu. Next, also we have various dominance of advanced subcastes, where these particular dominant castes are actually getting most of the benefits when it comes to the various government jobs, various other social sectors and so on. So these dominant castes do not let the benefits trickle down. Next, we also have the issue of decreased social mobility. When we talk about progression of life, building capabilities of these particular communities, they also suffer from the same. Finally, we also have this kind of phenomena which we know as reservation monopolization, because the reservation benefits generally go to the other classes rather than these SC communities. And that is why we have to look at some Supreme Court cases here. Remember the 1975 Punjab particular directive and also the Andhra Pradesh directive letter. It focused on giving the various subcategories between the SC communities in their state for various government job benefits and so on. But the E.V. Chennaiya versus Andhra Pradesh 2004 case actually struck down those kind of legislations taken by the state government, mainly by citing the Article 341, which actually says that only President can modify the SC/ST list. And here the Supreme Court further went on to say that SCs are a single homogeneous group. That means the SC community and all the groups between themselves have historically faced discrimination. So we cannot now say, according to the Supreme Court back in 2004, Supreme Court told that we cannot now say that we have various heterogeneous groups whereas they also face various discrimination between their own community. Supreme Court tended to overlook this serious issue, and they said that they are a single homogeneous group and states cannot subclassify due to Article 341. But the Davender Singh versus State of Punjab 2014 case, they actually referred this judgment, the 2004 judgment, to a 5-judge bench, and later it was again in 2020 referred to the 7-judge bench, right? Whereas the Supreme Court back in 2014 made the observation that inequality persists within the SCs and ST community themselves. They face so many discrimination, and that is why we cannot say that it has to be left to the president to decide on the SC/ST list, because the state governments are the closest when we talk about the welfare of the people. And that is why, in this 2024 Punjab versus Devender case, which was actually, a kind of a, say, restatements of your earlier judgment, and also the 2024 judgment revoked its 2004 judgment, and Supreme Court told that scheduled castes are not an indivisible monolith. It means that they are composed of heterogeneous groups. That means one community within the SCs do not have the same characteristics between the other communities in the SCs too. They have their own cultural norms, they have their own historical occupations, and that is why they have varying levels of backwardness. And the Supreme Court told for the very first time that the states can further classify them, and if there is a rational principle for differentiation, it has to be, with the purpose of sub-classification. That means the state can now classify the communities based on their own, say, particular surveys or particular studies. And that is why we also understood that this particular judgment is citing various constitutional articles, for example Article 14, Article 15, 16 and even Article 341, and it said that the President's list of scheduled castes does not violate it. For example, if the state governments are coming up with their own lists, it does not violate Article 341, because we have to understand the state governments have to classify them on the basis of their economic social backwardness, and that is exactly what the Telangana government have done. And here they have actually tried to divide the reservations based on the various groups. For example, group 1, group 2, group 3 classified based on the backwardness of these groups. So for example, if we talk about the group 1, they are actually the most backward. For example, the manual scavengers in the state, and they have around 15 kind of castes attributing to around 3.1% of the total SC population, and for them the state government is giving 1% reservation. Based on this, group 2 will be getting 9% and group 3 will be getting 5%. So it means that out of the total SC quota of 15%, this has been divided across communities, and this is much more fair, because we have so many instances that we have already talked about that the SC communities face discrimination within themselves, and that is also setting the precedent or the benchmark for the various other states to follow the same classification, or maybe with some other modifications to come up with their own forms of regulations on the same. That is, the states of Punjab, Tamil Nadu and Bihar, they can also learn from this particular classification. But here we have various critics, we have various opposition on this particular debate. There are various sections of the population which actually do not advocate the sub-categorization of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes or various other groups, because firstly they argue that if we sub-categorize a particular caste based on various other parameters, we will not be keeping the unity of that particular group. So it may distort the unity. That is the first point. Second, the states may also create this kind of lists. They can actually include some of the castes in various groups, and later they can create a grander narrative during the elections to fight for votes. So it can be also grander narrative by the state governments to conveniently classify some groups in some convenient groups to have various vote bank politics. Next, we also do not have up-to-date data on the demographic of a particular community in the country, because we do not have the latest census as of now. Also, we do not have proper amount of data collection between the various SC and the ST groups in the country, due to which we do not have reliable caste-based data. Fourth, there can be various legal disputes, because simply this policy taken by a particular state government or a multiple of state governments can open a Pandora's box of various legal disputes that can actually challenge based on the various constitutional provisions. The Supreme Court can again see some new batch of petitions fighting against the same, because again at the end of the day you have to understand everything matters when it is actually acceptable or say accepted by the greater population. Obviously, the population of the state or say the population of SCs in the countries will be supporting it. Mainly the various communities which suffer, they will be accepting it, but maybe the other communities within the SCs, they will not be supporting the same. They can raise various legal disputes. Sometimes those disputes can be also of political nature. Also, we have to keep in mind that we have so many fights between these particular states based on their communities. So we will be also having this situation, say, maybe pending at any court of our country. Next and final, we also have to understand that reservations were a temporary provision when the constitution was actually brought in force. As of now, we have to keep in mind, right, after so many decades of our independence, right, we have to think beyond reservations, because simply we have still deep-set inequities. We have unfair provisions, and the various corruption cases and the various other situations, particularly seen in the, say, percolation of the reservation benefits to the lowest strata. So for this, we have to actually move beyond reservations right now. We have to take more strict actions along with reservation policies to see the light of the tunnel. And that is why we have to understand that we have to have some proper strategies, some proper solutions in this particular matter. Firstly, we need to conduct caste surveys, we need to do caste census in the most fair manner. Also, following the advice of the Usha Mehra committee, we can also include a clause 3 in Article 341, where the state government can actually publish the various lists of the SC/STs, and it can also seek the president's nod for the same. Next, we also need to have clear guidelines to avoid arbitrary divisions by the state governments, mainly on political lines. We need to also launch various awareness campaigns, specifically by the NGOs, by the other civil society organizations. And also we have to phase out reservations gradually, because we can see there are many states in the country, if you can look at the list here, where they have exceeded the 50% cap on reservation. Now, in the comment section, can you let me know any constitutional provision which is actually limiting the reservation to 50% or not? So that is why we have to understand, we have to move beyond reservations, take some proper economic reforms, infrastructural reforms, and mainly developmental aspirational reforms for the communities here. And that is what brings me to these two PYQs. Firstly, 2018 remains PYQ. You can look at it. You can actually incorporate some of the things we have discussed in this kind of questions. Also, you let me know what is the answer to this 2023 prelims question in the comments below. After this, we also have a mains practice question for all to practice as usual. With this, I'll be moving on to the next one. So guys, we have a very interesting study coming from the National Law School of India University and IIT Madras, which have actually studied our non-farming sector, and they have commented on what are the various imperatives that hold on for this particular sector. And it becomes extremely important. That is why to focus this from a prelims perspective, from the perspective of economic and social development. Also for GS3, where we need to talk about the major crops and cropping patterns across the various country. We have to talk about the e-technology in the aid of farmers, economics of animal rearing, and also food processing sector. And if you can look at it, I have actually combined so many parts of the syllabus, because this is actually a very holistic topic, which is not a topic which is focused on the farming sector, but rather actually on the non-farming sector. Because we have to understand that whenever we talk about rural India, one picture comes to our mind, that is of a farmer plowing her field. But it is not always the case, because we have to talk about the various other peoples in the rural area who are actually talking about engaging in various sectors such as agro-processing industry, for example, rice mills, dairy units, also engaged in construction and infrastructural activities, building roads, buildings, engaged in retail and services, for example, having kirana shops or repair shops, and finally, tourism handicraft sector. So we have so many other sectors apart from the primary agricultural sector in the rural areas. They actually refer to rural non-farm economy, and according to various Niti Aayog reports, RBI reports, for our Indian economy to realize that 5 trillion goal, for that we have to strengthen not only the rural India, not only the urban India, but also we have to focus primarily on the non-farm economy, because when we talk about the current share, 2/3 of the rural income actually now comes from non-farm sector. That means only 1/3 or 33% is coming from our farming activities. And that is why there are so many people who are employed in this non-farm sector. If we can look across this kind of activities, and also when I talk about India's manufacturing contribution, and the contribution is coming from the rural non-farm economy, it is at the tune of 50% of India's total manufactured value addition, which is coming from the rural areas. So that is why we have a study by this particular two institutes where they have talked about Odisha, Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh. They have actually gone there and looked at the various non-farm sector improves farm labor efficiency. And also, if we can look at the household distributions among the various communities, social communities, we can see that the agricultural households with their own land, right? And also the non-agricultural households which they do not have their own land. If we can see, the percentage of SC population is actually more in this particular category where these maybe the farm laborers do not have their own land. And also across various other communities also we can see that it is mainly the people who are working as farm laborers or either in the non-farm economy. And that is where we need to talk about the key findings of the study right now. Firstly, the study talked about various interesting things which you can actually talk about in your mains answer writing too. You can actually note these things down in your notes. Firstly, the researchers found out that there are various sections of the population. For example, imagine that there is a labor migrant from UP to Punjab. Now that migrant went from UP to Punjab in search of some job or agricultural job and so on. So when that particular worker is employed in Punjab as an agricultural laborer, that laborer is looking at so many advanced irrigation concepts in Punjab. So when that laborer will be returning to his state UP, so he will be learning those things from Punjab and will be implementing those things in UP. And that means that this kind of migration which happens between the states mainly in the agricultural sector leads to the overall spillover benefits for the other states too, because simply in advanced agricultural states we have advanced irrigation methods or advanced cultivation methods which the other laborers they copy and they implement it in the other states, which improves the farm efficiency over a period of time. Also, we have the various agricultural seasons. We have the sowing season, we have the harvesting season. So between various seasons, the farm labor do not have any particular work to do. So between those seasons, the various farm labor can actually be engaged in non-farm activities. For example, maybe talking about or boosting rural tourism or working as a part of Manrega work somewhere. So this is where we have to talk about the seasonal labor allocation too, where this particular non-farm activities try to actually complement the farm activities too. Next, also when we talk about agricultural activity, any kind of agricultural sowing, harvesting and all those practices comes with risks, be it the risks due to various floods which are happening right now or excessive monsoon or the lack of monsoon nonetheless. So we have to understand that agriculture is a sector where we have perennial risks because mainly our farm lands are mainly dependent on the monsoon rains. So basically, to diversify beyond this kind of risks, we can actually take up the non-farm activities, and that is actually seen in this state, in this particular states where the peoples have actually moved to non-farm activities to supplement their income. Next, we have to talk about various government policies too. Policies such as Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, also the Prime Minister formalization of micro food processing, Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program, Manrega, PM Kisan, PM Swanidhi, various self-help group promotion. For example, the collaboration between the Kerala government and the Kudumbashree self-help group. Also, we have the KVIC, NSIC for skilling initiatives, Sfurti Ustad to look into the various handicrafts production in various villages in rural areas. So all these government policies are there to impart various skilling lessons, to impart various practices related to food processing industries. So there are so many government initiatives, and also these initiatives are leading to positive impacts over a period of time according to the various study findings. But these study findings are also talking about various issues or challenges that the non-farm sector are facing. Firstly, they have credit constraints. Mainly, if you can look at these activities, what are the key sectors in the rural non-farm economy? Generally, we have agro-processing sectors, construction, retail services and so on. So for this, these rural individuals have to become entrepreneurs. They need to take some funds from banks or various other sectors. So generally it has been seen that they take funds from their relatives, friends, families, and mainly the money lenders. And we know that these are the informal banking system where we have greater interest rates, more exploitation. And we have to talk about including them more in the formal banking system. So that is where, firstly, there is a credit shortage issue. Secondly, there are also skill gaps. When we talk about the tourism sector, for example, if I talk about the agro-tourism sector, it is actually a very attractive sector in recent times. Talk about the US farms or the European farms, they are all promoting something which we know as agri-tourism, where people like you and me can actually go to the farms, enjoy a typical farmer life, and we can return back. But when we talk about the same in India, we do not have the awareness at the very first time. Also, we do not have proper skills when it pertains to tourism industry or management, when it comes to the various aspects of, say, the stay or accommodation. Also, when I talk about the food processing industry of our country, they need high-skilled labor. And because also we have to understand about the non-farm trades, they also need better amount of skilling requirement. So that is why the skill gaps are there in the rural sector. And that is why, if you can see, we are also trying to implement so many skilling initiatives in recent times. And finally, we also have the risk from migration, because unplanned migration can lead to labor shortages in the villages. We understand that in India, there are only few states which are agriculturally superior. These states, for example, say Haryana, Punjab, they see a lot of influx from other states, for example, say UP, Bihar, West Bengal, where the migrants from this region come to these states of Punjab, Western UP, Haryana, and so on. So we have to understand this unplanned migration actually leads to the degradation of the various facilities in their home states, because those laborers simply could have stayed there based on the various government support and the help, and may have started a business opportunity and give much more employment there in their own village rather than migrating. So that is why the policymakers do not have a proper data as to how many laborers are migrating between the states, or what will be the trend of migration going forward. So these are the various issues according to the findings. Now, we have to talk about the way forward. Some of the way forwards are actually proposed by this particular articles itself. Firstly, if I talk about the very first challenge, it was the financial challenge. So we have to deal about the financial challenge head on. Firstly, when we talk about the financial issues, or say the credit issues, where the farmers can actually get more loans from the banks, we need to talk about now strengthening the rural institutions which give short-term and long-term finance. Specifically, we have to talk about the rural, regional rural banks. We have to talk about the NABARD. We have to talk about the rural cooperative banks, the primary agricultural credit societies, in increasing their role in giving finance to the people of the rural sector, and mainly the non-farm sector. And here we have to promote more and more instances of self-help groups bank linkage, SSG bank linkage, wherein a bank actually tries to identify a self-help group and it's tries to give the credit to the self-help group directly, so that each of the members in the self-help group will be getting credit individually. This also reduces the risk for the bank, because if you are a part of the SSG and if you default on the loans for any reason, then the entire SSG would be able to compensate for your loss in some of the cases. So that is why this kind of promotion of linkages must be done. Next, we have to promote high value sectors in India. We have to actually understand that the fisheries sector, meat processing sector, the dairy sectors are actually of high value. Now also we have the inclusion of the horticultural sector, mainly the flowers, the fruits and the vegetables that we grow are in high demand in the rest of the countries. And that is why we need maybe a change in also the cropping patterns. That is, we have to look beyond the crops, we have to diversify beyond the crops. We need to also include state-of-the-art technology. And in this particular sector, if I can talk about one model, the Amul model comes to my mind when we actually talk about developing a particular sector in the animal husbandry arena. Talk about the dairy sector, talk about the Amul model, they are actually synonymous in nature. Because the Amul cooperative model has used so many cooperative societies in actually sorting, grading the various milk, distribution supply chains, starting straight from the milk producer to consumers like us. So they have actually tried to simplify the process and made the economic benefits trickle down to the milk producers. And that is where this model is so much successful. We can actually try to implement in rest of the other sectors too. Next, we can actually talk about a cluster-based approach, a developmental approach, where we have so many villages across the countries. We have also so many towns and cities across the countries, where we have also the periphery villages and the rural areas. For example, imagine Jaipur. Now, Jaipur is famous for its textiles. Now, if you talk about the yarn and fabric of the Jaipur, they actually come from the surrounding villages too. So we have to talk about developing these villages as clusters. We can actually try to call all the people who are participating in those areas at one place, and we can actually give them more money, more skills, and more opportunities, more funds, more entrepreneurship skills to develop their own villages and to actually try to develop them as clusters, not only to distribute it to the rest of the country, but also for export promotion going forwards. And also here, the tourism sector holds great potential, mainly in the hilly areas, mainly in the northeast areas. We also can promote tourism because, this complements well with the rural economy too. Because a lot of people right now in the rest of the country, in the cities, while their incomes are rising, they are seeking leisure benefits and so on, for which they also look for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day trips. And for this, we have to also develop this particular sector. Next, we have to formalize the informal sector, for which we have to state the obvious things, that we need to give more social security, we need to give fair wages to the peoples of this particular sector. And finally, we need to actually include them digitally, because we have so many digital initiatives all around us, and for which we need to promote the broadband connections under the BharatNet program. We have to also improve the various telecom sector. We have to talk about improving the infrastructural sector in digital connectivity under the PM Gati Shakti mission too. So this is actually how we can actually transform the non-farm economy in our rural areas. And that is, as usual, a practice question for all of you. You practice this, you let me know 2-3 of your own opinions in the comments below. And for your introduction, you can actually start with a report from the world of labor, and we can actually talk about the distribution of employment in agricultural and non-farm sector. So now we'll be moving on to the simplified articles. Guys, you already know that Choksi has been arrested in Belgium, and the modern Quit India movement actually started with these people. Actually, we had Vijay Mallya who escaped way before, right? But we have this as a part of the modern Quit India movement, as you can see from this. So that is why, jokes aside, we have to discuss about the various provisions regarding extradition in the country, and which actually makes it extremely important, this topic, for our prelims where we have the Indian polity and governance, and also for GS3, wherein some of the cases regarding extraditions may fall under money laundering and its prevention. So that is why we have to firstly look under the prelims pointers as to what is extradition in the very first place. It is actually a detailed legal process wherein a country sends back a fugitive, whereas that fugitive can be accused or can be convicted too. Let me know in the comments what is the difference between being accused and convicted. So we have to send that particular person to another country for trial or punishment. If we talk about the case of Choksi, he is in Belgium, and we have to extradite him from Belgium to India for trial or punishment according to the various multi-billion-dollar scam that he caused in the Punjab National Bank way back, along with various co-conspirators such as Nirav Modi. And here, when we talk about the principle of extradition, there are generally 3 principles. Firstly, any kind of offense that a particular person has committed must have dual criminality. For example, say if you are running away with multi-billion-dollar funds as a scam from the Punjab National Bank in India, so that particular thing must be a criminal offense in India. That particular offense must be criminal offense in Belgium too. That means it is having a dual criminality nature. Next, we have an exception to this principle. For example, the political and military exception. That means no extradition will be possible for political crimes, example sedition and so on. Because simply, maybe a government can actually seek extradition of that particular person for persecuting that individual. There are so many examples. Julian Assange is one prominent example in recent times. Also, human rights protection is also one of the principles, and no extradition will be done if there is a risk of torture or death or penalty. If you can look at it here, India is actually having treaties, extradition treaties with around 47 countries right now. And also, if you can see that we have also extradition arrangements with various other countries too. So this means that apart from these treaties, we also have some non-treaty arrangement on a case-to-case basis, for example, with Portugal, with Italy, and so on. In India, we have the framework within the Extradition Act of 1962, wherein we have to understand, we have to define the extradition offense. It has been defined as a crime that must take place in India. Also, the requesting country also must be having that dual criminality provision, as we stated before. And also, this must be listed in the bilateral treaty. So, these two countries must be signing treaties between themselves. Also, the process when we have to seek an extradition from the government side, firstly, the foreign government will be submitting a request to the Ministry of External Affairs. Next, a magistrate will be examining the various evidence and will be issuing arrest warrant. And finally, the central government will be making the final decision. So this is actually a step-by-step process. And finally, there can be grounds of denial based on political offense, as we have discussed, because based on any anti-government process and so on, you can actually be extradited. So that is why for denial, we have some grounds as a part of our acts itself. It actually shows that we do not actually seek extradition based on political reasons. Also, for jeopardy, the things has been exempted, and also for human rights risks, it has been exempted in the case of our country. And when we talk about the global extradition frameworks, we have the UN Model Treaty of 1990, which is actually a template or a format for all the bilateral extradition treaties, and also it is covering various serious crimes such as drug trafficking, terrorism activities, and so on. On the other side, we also have the United Nations Convention versus Transnational Crime of 2000, wherein we have also the various extradition simplifications made with the subject matters of human trafficking, corruption cases, and so on. And beyond that, this particular convention also gives legal assistance to the countries in this matter. And when I look about these particular details here, that is not much important for the examination. We have to keep in mind that actually India and Belgium had an extradition agreement in 1901 itself. And in recent times also, they actually had this mutually legal assistance treaty. So in the case or in the occurrence of any such, mediated cases such as Mehul Choksey and their affairs, it has to be legally sorted out between the nations. And here we have to understand that Mehul throughout his exit from India to Antigua and then to Belgium, he has actually did so many legal maneuvers, or you can say simply in direct terms, as being extremely clever in actually trying to dribble past the legal boundaries. He actually had sought an Antiguan citizen when he exited India. So this actually means that India does not have any extradition treaty with Antigua. So whenever he left India, he made his mind to actually go to Antigua and seek their citizenship so that India cannot persecute him. Also, his wife recently became a Belgian citizen on the grounds that Choksey is having blood cancer and he is having treatment in Belgium. That is why, the citizenship was processed, and this can also pose various legal challenges. So it has to be seen as to what this case is piling up to be, but we know that this is a serious matter right now, and it is up to Belgium to decide upon the merits of the case, and also on India to negotiate on the merits of the case here. According to recent RBI data, we have a surge in the gold loans in the country. We know that people have several amount of gold with them, and whenever they need money, they can deposit the gold at any gold loan bank or any other financial institution or at any other non-banking financial company, NBFCs. And in return for the gold, they can take some money for their personal consumption, for their business consumption, or for whatever they want the loan money to be used for. And when I talk about this, we have this instance where right now in recent times, the gold loans have been surging like nothing. And this is why, if you can look at the report, of the total outstanding loans, Based on December 2023 and December 2024, we have seen a growth of around 27% over the last 1 year when we talk about the total outstanding loans which have been taken against gold. Right? Also, when we talk about the non-performing assets or those kind of loans who have actually proven not to be very much profitable for the banks or the NBFCs, in a sense, it generally means that some part of the principal or some part of the interest rate on these loans have not been paid for around 3 months. This means that they have become non-performing assets or kind of loss for the banks. Now these losses have also skyrocketed in just 1 year to the tune of 28.58%, and this is extremely significant. Why? Because firstly, we are talking about loans being extremely easy because the NBFCs, the banks are giving easy loans based on the gold. At the end of the day, the people are not paying back the loans. That means that we have something which we know as a liquidity crisis. That means people maybe are not paying back the loans and the banks are not getting back the money, the NBFCs are not getting back the money. That is resulting in a particular liquidity crisis. As also if you can see here, the banks, correct, are having their outstanding loans increasing over a period of time. Their NPAs are also increasing. The NBFCs are also seeing the same pattern, wherein we have to understand the NBFCs are actually seeing much more growth in the NPAs and the loan amount than the banks themselves. That means they are kind of reckless at lending, or say we have to look at some of the reasons why this is becoming so much popular in the recent times. Firstly, we have a cultural factor. Firstly, gold is considered to be emergency fund for a traditional Indian household, where 25% of the Indian households own gold, and they own gold with that mentality that in some blue Monday or in some emergency cases, they can actually liquidate that gold and get some loans, and whenever they run their business or they achieve normalcy, they can pay back the loan. Also, it is right now extremely easy for all of us to just go to Paytm, just go to any other mobile banking app and get loans, and between this particular loan amounts and the security amount, we can actually keep the gold as collateral. So it is actually extremely easy for now in this digital times. Next, when we talk about the gold price rise from 2019 to 2025, we have seen that it has actually skyrocketed from 32,000 in 2019 to 72,000 in 2025. So this is actually one of the reasons why they are taking more and more loans, and also the banks are readily giving the loans because some of these loans obviously will be getting defaulted, and the banks can actually reap on the various appreciation benefits of the loan, or say the actual gold amount which is actually kept as a collateral. And that is why RBI is actually very concerned. Firstly, RBI pointed that the gold appraised without customer's presence. For example, a particular customer has taken a gold loan for 1 lakh rupees, and the particular customer deposited, for example, say 1.5 lakh rupees of gold. Now, in cases of default or in cases of any other thing, sometimes the banks or the NBFCs are seen that the gold are sold without the customer's permission. Also, the people who are taking that 1 lakh rupees, the banks are not at all concerned, or the NBFCs are not at all concerned where these people are investing their money into. Maybe they can invest the money in stocks where they can lose the money. Maybe they are just taking the money for their day-to-day purposes. So there has to be a particular check by the banks or the NBFCs as to why you are taking the loan amount. Also, non-transparent gold actions are taking place on a case of default. For example, here the auctions of gold or say collateral is a very normal thing for a bank to do in case a person has defaulted or say is incapable to give the various say financial obligations back to the bank. In the case the banks are obliged to do a transparent auction that can be held in the presence of various supervisors and financial experts, but that is not being done. Also, sometimes it has been seen that the loan amounts are exceeding 75% of the gold value. For example, if you require a loan of 1 lakh rupees, you cannot give say collateral or gold of 1 lakh rupees itself, right? You have to give more than that. That is, you can only get 75% of your gold value. So also it has been seen that this cap is not maintained at most times. And also in 2023, RBI took some actions. Firstly, it banned the same day repledging. It has been seen that person A took a gold loan of 1 lakh rupees at 10 a.m. in the morning, and by the evening, right, that person is again taking the same loan of the same amount of the same security, right, by just paying the interest amount to the bank and not paying the principal. So this is actually a condition which we know as evergreening of the loans, correct? So this repledging is actually taking place, and RBI actually banned this particular aspect in 2023. Also, the RBI actually ordered all the banks or NBFCs to audit gold loan processes too. And this is why, we have to take various actions regarding the same. And that is why the RBI right now will be taking some actions, and that is why in its draft guidelines, RBI has set up some rules. For example, you cannot take any gold loans, again gold ETFs or mutual funds, because these are market instruments, these are subjected to market risks, and that is why it is actually intended to reduce speculative lending. Next, you have to ensure 75% of your loan value amount for consumption loans. You cannot give, more than 75% of the gold amount. Next, it has to also be a 12-month cap on bullet repayment loans, right? So we have to have a cap limit of how soon we can take a new loan again, correct? And this will be stopping indefinite loan extensions. And finally, for the gold and its ownership, those documents needs to be furnished mandatorily right now. And this will be cutting frauds, because it has been seen that many thieves, many dacoits have actually taken gold loans based on stolen gold. And that is why we have to keep these instructions and guidelines in mind, mainly for the prelims examination. Guys, in this editorial, the Hindu is talking about the need for the reforms in the RTI Act based on the recent amendments that are being proposed to dilute the strength of the RTI Act. So let us talk about it in great detail. Firstly, we have to talk about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act and its overlapping with the RTI Act here. And we have to understand that Section 44, subclause 3 of this particular Digital Data Protection Act is amending Section 8, subclause IJ of the RTI Act. That means that the government can now deny any personal information under RTI without even considering public interest. For example, say you have a particular bureaucrat who has furnished a fake caste certificate for his or her recruitment examination. So as a public servant, his caste certificate is no longer a private document, or a document which has to be kept behind the privacy curtains, because that particular person has taken that job with fraud. And for that, you can actually request with reference to an application on the RTI Act, and that is how justice can be done. Because we have to understand the RTI Act has been ushered in just to ensure that there cannot be any darkness in the public accounts or the public record. And that is why the RTI Act is such a big landmark legislation in the country. And this is where, according to the recent changes in the Section 44(3) of the Digital Data Protection Act, this Section 8 has been diluted, because right now the government can deny any personal information just citing the digital privacy regulations. And that is where government can now deny this without even considering public interest. And there is no safeguard. That means it does not require the authorities to justify why they are withholding this kind of data. That means that in case, look at various scenarios, that in case a politician's educational degree is defrauded, earlier under the RTI you can actually ask for it to be disclosed, but under right now this can be cited as personal information. A bureaucrat's corruption case also can be classified as personal, right? This can actually lead to various investigative journalists not getting the information on time. And finally, when we talk about public welfare spending scenarios, right, earlier citizens could audit various schemes, right? But right now there can be risks of denial based on various information that can be cited as personal. So these are just some examples. And here, when we talk about how this section is actually trying to balance privacy and public interest, firstly we have to look into the original provision. That, this original provision allows withholding of the personal information, but mandates disclosure if public interest is more than privacy. Just remember that bureaucrat's fake caste certificate example. If it is a fake caste certificate, the public interest is more than the private interest or the privacy interest of that bureaucrat. So the earlier Section 8 of the RTI Act, while it also tried to defend some of the personal information of the public sector, but if the public interest is more, the government is just bound to give or disclose the information in the mainstream. That is why we have to understand that always you have to keep in mind that public interest must be more than private interest or privacy interest. According to also our Information and Broadcasting Minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, he also said that this amendment is preventing RTI misuse, because according to the government, there are so many RTI activists which are actually misusing the various provisions. And also the minister is telling that this is aligning with the privacy rights under the judgment of Puttaswamy 2017 Supreme Court case. And also, the minister has assured the salaries, asset and the various other details are still accessible under the Section 3 of this Act. But at the end of the day, we have to take some way forward, because it is aware the privacy can cloud the various public interest in the future. Because RTI, or say the Right to Information Act, will be giving us independence to look into the various notes, extracts, government records and so on. We can actually take certified samples, we can expect works and so on. These are all at stake, and that is why we have to take a way forward. Firstly, the article argues to restore public interest override in the RTI Section 8. Secondly, we have to define what do you mean by personal information. That has to be defined much more clearly. Thirdly, we have to exclude public servants' professional records from privacy claims, because the various officials, bureaucrats, they can use this tenet to hide beyond the corruption lens. Also, we must penalize frivolous denials, because there are so many aspects of RTI applications being denied just citing this privacy norm. And finally, we have to train the public information officials in a better manner to deal with this kind of requests and make them more sensitized with this particular case here. And that is why we have this question of 2021-2018 from prelims. You let me know what is the answer. Solve this in the comments below. Guys, yesterday was the Assamese New Year, so to all my Assamese friends, a Happy New Year, and also to all my Bengali friends, Shubho Navabarsho today. So this is where we have to celebrate India's cultural diversity, and this picture is reflecting just that, wherein mainly for the exam point of view, we have to actually talk about the classical Sattriya dance, which is traditionally performed in the state of Assam, which is extremely important from an prelims and also mains perspective pertaining to Indian culture and her art forms. So when I talk about the Sattriya dance, its origin can be traced back to Bhakti movement in the 15th century, where this emerged as a new Vaishnavite movement started by Srimanto Shankardev. And the place where it started is actually known as Kshatras. So this is actually referred to the various Vaishnavites monasteries. So this particular dance tradition for the very first time emerged in India from a monastic tradition. That is why Sattriya is actually known as very unique, because it is the only classical dance tied to monastic traditions in the country. And also the classical dance status has been accorded by the Sangeet Natak Academy in 2000 to Sattriya dance. And here, when we talk about the various components, we have to keep this in mind for our examination. We have three components: Natto, Nritto, Nritta. So here we have these three components which are talking about the individual description, performances of dramatic storytelling, pure dance movements and expressive dance. So this is where we have to also talk about what the recent changes between the traditional and the modern Kshatriyas. So here when we talk about the Kshatriya dance, firstly, initially it was actually performed by the male monks who are actually known as bokots. And right now they are performed by both men and women. Mainly the earlier themes were Krishna Radha Bhakti, the Ram Sita Bhakti, and right now it is also including the non-mythological themes over a period of time. Now, when we talk about the various other details, there are, when we talk about the Sattriya dance, it is actually having various other folk dance inspirations, right? If you can look at the various other types of dance in Assam, such as Bihu, Bodo tribal dances and various other forms, it is kind of having a direct influence from these dances too. And also it is having various strict guidelines. For example, for the Hasta Mudras, right, or the hand gestures, they must be following Natya Shastra. Right? Also, for the various footworks and the various rhythms and various costumes and makeups, so they have to follow these various strict norms and regulations following traditional Assamese attire. And also when we talk about the music is actually to the tune of Borgits, which is actually Shankaradev's devotional songs. So you have to keep this in mind for the prelims examination. These are the main keywords that they can ask in the exam. And also the musical style is based on the Shankaradev's music style of Borgits, and the lyrics is generally in the Brojabuli language. And the main instruments that they use are khol, bahi, violin, harmonium, and also shankho. So this we actually have the various instruments to be used, and that is where, after getting all the information regarding the same, you let me know what is the answer of this PYQ in the comments below. The last article of the day is actually on the Archaeological Survey of India and the information regarding the same, and also its recent Dwarka exploration. Now, when we talk about the Archaeological Survey of India, it was established in 1861 by Alexander Cunningham. You let me know in the comments who he was. Also, the headquarters of ASI is in Delhi. It is under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and the main role is actually for the protection, conservation, research of India's cultural heritage. It is actually one of the most important institutions, keeping our monuments to the tune of around 4,000 monuments in great shape and size. So it is actually having the legal architecture under the say Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act, which was also amended in 2010 later. So it is also publishing a very important say journal, an article review, which is a form of Indian Archaeology, a review. It also manages all the 42 UNESCO World Heritage sites. In the comments, you also let me know 2 sites who recently got this status, and also runs 44 museums. Some of the recent initiatives, again important for the prelims, is actually adopt a heritage scheme where the various corporate sector, they can actually adopt one of the monuments, and they can actually fund for its upkeep, for the maintenance of that monument. For example, the Red Fort is actually given to the Dalmia Group for its upkeep, maintenance, and so on. And it is actually a very important initiative to actually bring in private sector in our cultural conservation sector of our country. It is also running along with our fundamental duties and also the DPSPs. Second, it is also keeping the various digital archives of our monuments, various scriptures, documents relevant to the archaeology, and also it is having this Indian Heritage app exclusively for the digital presence of the ASI's objectives and the missions. And here we have a new initiative where this underwater archaeology wing of the ASI will be exploring the Dwarka and the Bet Dwarka regions, which are actually, supposedly the home of Lord Krishna, right? It is actually located on an island of the coast of Gujarat, whereas we also have the Dwarkadish temple located in this region. In 2007, there have been so many instances of this kind of underwater structures, beneath so many deposits of layers of around 10 meters, right, were excavated. And, right now there are some evidences of iron objects, beads, copper objects, and various other rings, and even pottery, which we can find underwater in this region, maybe hinting at this mythological reality of our nation. So that is why it becomes extremely important and interesting to see what the excavations will be like. So we'll be saving that for a future date. As of now, thank you for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till again, we'll be meeting again. All the best and best of luck. Thank you.